At my daughter's wedding, her groom, Daniel Cross, shoved my face into the cake, sneering, "Try the dessert." Laughter erupted as anger burned inside me, icing sliding down my chin, and fear of my diabetes struck me instantly. Then, a guest's voice rang out, pointing at me. "He's a billionaire!" The smugness on Daniel's face vanished in an instant. His color drained, his arrogance cracked. In that moment, I knew his cruelty would cost him dearly. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching in the comments. Of course, we understand your financial limitations. Edward Cross cut into my words about wedding venues, slicing through them like a knife through silk. The chandelier above seemed to dim, conversations around us carried on, but at our table, silence fell like a cruel judgment. Daniel smirked behind his wine glass, while Sophia Reed's cheeks flushed with shame. I had only been describing a simple outdoor pavilion I'd seen, elegant, peaceful, modest. But apparently, simplicity was beneath the Cross family. "Dad makes things work with what we have," Sophia blurted, her voice trembling higher than usual. "He's always been resourceful." Resourceful? Edward rolled the word on his tongue like fine wine. That's one way to put it. The waiter refilled our glasses with quiet skill. I stared at the crystal as it caught the light, wondering how much this dinner cost by the minute. No prices on the menu, always a bad sign. I chose salmon. They chose aged steak. One meal was worth more than a week of groceries back home. "Don't worry about the wedding costs," Margaret Cross added, her smile cutting sharper than her diamond earrings. "We completely understand your situation." My situation, as though being less wealthy was a disease requiring pity. Daniel leaned back, fabric stretching across his chest with arrogance. "We've got connections in the Hamptons. The Grand Pavilion. You probably never heard of it." "No, I haven't," I admitted softly. $50,000 just for the space." His words were casual, but his eyes hunted for my reaction. "But don't worry about contributing. Thomas, we've got this covered." The gift box in my jacket suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Inside was a Victorian silver locket, genuine, meaningful, only $37. A treasure of the heart, now feeling like pocket change at a luxury car showroom. Sophia touched my arm. "Dad, you don't have to. I always provide for my family," I whispered firmly. Edward gave a dry laugh. "Of course you do, in your own way." Dessert arrived, gold leaf creations that looked more like art than food. I thought of our scarred wooden table at home, where Sophia studied for 12 years, where we celebrated her college acceptance with a grocery store cake. "We're planning quite the bachelor party," Daniel announced loudly. "Private yacht, naturally. You're welcome, if you can get the time off work." Time off work. I hadn't needed permission in 15 years. Then came the sting. "Thomas, remind me, what is it you do again?" Margaret asked, dabbing her lips with a napkin more expensive than my shirt. "Investment consulting," I replied. "True, though incomplete." "How lovely," she said coolly. "Small accounts, I imagine." The check arrived in a sleek leather folder. Edward didn't glance at the amount. His black card slid in effortlessly. The waiter's bow hinted the tip alone surpassed my monthly groceries. Outside, their Mercedes gleamed beneath the streetlights like a predator, while my Toyota Camry looked like it had wandered into the wrong world. "See you soon," Edward called, his voice smug. "We'll handle the real planning." I helped Sophia into the passenger seat. Silence stretched between us like a fragile bridge. Would either of us cross it? The highway stretched out, headlights sweeping across our faces. Sophia fidgeted with her purse strap, the squeaks echoing in the quiet car. "The restaurant was beautiful," she whispered finally. "Those chandeliers, they must have cost a fortune." I gripped the wheel tighter. 20 minutes home. 20 minutes to decide if tonight's humiliation would remain unanswered. "Sophia," my voice cracked. "We need to talk about Daniel." Her body stiffened. "What about him?" The way he spoke, the way his family looked at us, looked at you. She turned sharply. "Dad, they're just used to having money. They don't mean it." A truck's headlights briefly lit the car, and in that flash, I saw the truth. My daughter defended a man who let his father tear me apart, who smiled while it happened. Character doesn't change with money, I said quietly. Tonight showed me exactly who they are. You barely know them. I know enough. I've seen how Daniel talks to service workers, to anyone he sees as beneath him. Tonight, that included me. Her laugh was bitter. You're paranoid and controlling. The word hit harder than Edward's scorn. Controlling? As if wanting better for my daughter meant chaining her freedom. I'm not trying to control you, I said softly, forcing my voice to stay steady. I'm trying to protect you from making a mistake that could steal decades of your happiness. A mistake? Sophia Reed's voice broke, rising with emotion. My engagement was a mistake. Your engagement to him might be. Stop the car. What? I said stop the car right now. Her face glowed under the dashboard lights, torn between fury and hurt. This wasn't how I'd imagined this talk. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Sophia, let's just... Pull over, Dad. Now! My hands tightened on the wheel, but I obeyed, easing the car onto the shoulder. Before the tires fully stilled, she was unbuckling her seatbelt. You don't understand anything, she whispered fiercely, clutching her purse. You don't understand Daniel. You don't understand his family. And you definitely don't understand what I need. Sweetheart, please. What I need is support from my father, not judgment. What I need is someone who trusts me to make my own choices. She flung open the door. A rush of cool night air swept inside, laced with exhaust and distant rain. Where are you going? I pleaded. Anywhere but here. She stepped out, then bent down to meet my eyes. I'll call Daniel to pick me up. At least he doesn't think I'm too stupid to choose my own life. The door slammed. Her heels echoed against the asphalt as she walked toward a glowing gas station. My phone buzzed soon after. She was already texting him, already choosing him over me. I sat frozen until I saw her disappear into the harsh fluorescent lights. Only then did I pull back onto the highway, alone. The radio hummed softly, filling the silence, yet the empty passenger seat beside me screamed with her absence. When I finally turned into my driveway in Hoboken, even my modest two-story house looked smaller, lonelier. The porch light stretched long shadows across a little garden where Sophia and I had planted tomatoes every spring since she was 8. Just a week ago, everything had been different. Just a week ago, I had been at the same kitchen table, sipping hot coffee over the morning paper. April 22nd had begun like any ordinary Tuesday. Quiet, predictable content. The house smelled of French roast and the faint lavender soap Sophia always used. My phone rang, exactly 8:47 a.m. Dad. Her voice had bubbled with joy. I have news. I smiled instantly. Good news, I hope. The best news, Daniel proposed. Her happiness poured through the line, contagious and bright. For a moment, every doubt I had about her boyfriend melted in the face of her joy. She deserved love, someone to hold her heart carefully. Tell me everything, I urged, leaning back. It was perfect, Dad. Central Park, that spot overlooking the reservoir, where we had our first date. He got down on one knee. Joggers, dog walkers, everyone watching. And the ring, a princess cut diamond. It catches the light like crazy. I pictured it clearly. Her glowing face, strangers applauding, love filling the air. The thought warmed me, even while shadows of concern about Daniel lingered. I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. There's going to be an engagement dinner next week, she added. You'll finally meet his parents properly. They're wonderful people. Dad, his father built their business from nothing. You'll have so much to talk about. That was the moment I'd made a choice that would lead to tonight's heartbreak. Sophia, before we meet them, I need to ask you something. A favor? Anything. I had stood by the window, gazing at my neighbor's plain lawn. I'd like to keep my financial situation private. Let them think I'm just ordinary, a regular working man. The line had gone quiet. But why would you want to do that? She asked, confusion in her voice. Because I want to see who they really are. Money changes everything. It masks people's truth. If they think I'm wealthy, they'll play a role. If they think I'm ordinary, then their treatment will be real. And if it's cruel, we'll know who they truly are. Her silence lingered long. Then, Dad, isn't that a little manipulative? It's practical, I replied firmly. Real character shows when kindness has nothing to gain. Now, back in my driveway, that conversation haunted me. Had I been wise or just stubborn, my modest home stood still. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, unremarkable to anyone else. But the numbers locked in my desk drawer told a different story. The wealth had never mattered to me. Only she did. Inside, family photos lined the hallway. Sophia at her graduation. Sophia at Christmas. Sophia laughing freely at one of my silly jokes. Memories everywhere. Her love was once so simple, so pure. I climbed the stairs, every step heavier. Tomorrow would begin what I feared, a silence between us. I had asked her to hide my wealth, and in return, I had lost her trust. The irony cut deep. In trying to protect her from people who worship money, I had pushed her straight into their arms. The house felt different now. The simple furniture, the quiet rooms, they no longer comforted. They pressed on my chest like a weight. The living room was unchanged for 15 years. The same couch, the same scarred wooden table with its countless ring marks from evenings of laughter. The only expensive things were hidden away. Portfolios, investments, enough wealth to buy this whole neighborhood. Yet, I still sat in my old reading chair, the one Sophia had picked when she was 16. "Dad, this one's perfect," she'd said back then, running her hand over the worn leather. "It looks like it has stories to tell." She was right, and one story I had never told her. The story of 1995. I was 28, living in a cramped studio in San Francisco. A Murphy bed folded down across half the floor. My kitchen was nothing more than a hot plate and a mini fridge that wheezed like it was dying. Each morning, I walked 12 blocks to the accounting firm. I refused to spend $2 on bus fare. My savings account showed $5,027. I checked it daily like a heartbeat. 2 years of sacrifice, canned vegetables, pasta, 3 shirts worn in rotation. That Tuesday, everything shifted. I had just bought a bagel from the day-old bin when 2 young men stopped me outside a coffee shop. "Excuse me," the taller one asked shyly. "Are you an accountant?" They looked barely old enough to vote. The shorter one clutched an old laptop like it was life itself. Both radiated raw excitement, impossible to ignore. "I work in accounting," I admitted carefully. "We need someone to look at our numbers," the tall one pressed. "Someone smart, someone who understands money." They explained their idea over terrible coffee in my building's lobby. A software platform that would revolutionize how people shared information. The internet was still young then, dial-up connections and basic websites. Their vision seemed impossible and inevitable simultaneously. "We need initial investment," the short one said, his hands shaking slightly. "Nothing huge. $5,000 would let us rent office space, buy better equipment, maybe eat something other than ramen for a few months." $5,000. My entire safety net. I should have said no. Should have explained that losing $5,000 would mean moving back to my parents' basement in Ohio, admitting defeat. Instead, I found myself asking questions. Market research? Revenue projections? Competition analysis? They had answers. Good ones. More importantly, they had something I recognized from my own mirror. Hunger. Not for luxury, but for the chance to build something meaningful. "If I invest," I said slowly, "I want 10% equity." "Deal." No hesitation. No lawyer. Just a handshake in a lobby that smelled like industrial carpet and broken dreams. 6 months later, their first major client signed. 18 months after that, a tech giant acquired them for $42 million. My $5,000 became $4.2 million overnight. I sat in my unchanged living room, remembering that moment, the phone call that changed everything, the realization that money was just a tool, not a destination. I'd seen what wealth did to people. I watched the lottery winners and inheritance recipients in my accounting practice. watching money reveal character rather than create it. That's why I kept living simply. Why I raised Sophia Reed to value work over wealth, character over capital. Why I'd asked her to hide my financial situation from the Cross family. The photograph on my end table showed Sophia at her college graduation, beaming beside me in front of a modest restaurant where we'd celebrated. She had no idea her education was paid for by tech stock dividends. No idea her father could have bought her anything she wanted. Tomorrow, I realized I'd need to decide whether that philosophy was worth losing my daughter forever. Morning light didn't make the situation clearer. I woke up hoping last night had been a nightmare, that Sophia hadn't chosen Daniel Cross over me in a gas station parking lot. But my phone showed no missed calls, no apologetic texts, no signs the world had reset while I slept. Day one felt manageable. Sophia needed space to process. I maintained my routines. Coffee at 6:30, newspaper by 7, checking market reports by 8. Each time my phone buzzed, hope spiked. Usually just emails about investment portfolios that seemed increasingly meaningless. By day 3, I started leaving careful voicemails. Hi, sweetheart. It's Dad. Just wanted to say I love you. Call when you're ready. Short, respectful, not pushy. Day 7 brought longer messages. Sophia, I've been thinking about our conversation. Maybe I could have expressed my concerns differently. You know I want you to be happy, right? That's all I've ever wanted. Week 2, I discovered gardening. Sophia had always loved my vegetable patch. We'd planted tomatoes together every spring since she was 8. Now, I worked the soil alone, pulling weeds that seemed to multiply overnight. Physical labor helped quiet the constant urge to call her. The tomato seedlings I'd bought weeks ago sat in their plastic containers, waiting. Too late to plant them now without her. The tradition felt incomplete, like trying to clap with one hand. Week 3 brought desperation, disguised as productivity. I organized 20 years of photographs, finding hundreds of Sophia at every age. Birthday parties, school plays, graduation day. In every picture, she looked at me with complete trust. When has that changed? My voicemails grew longer, more emotional. I keep thinking about when you were 12 and broke Mrs. Peterson's window with that baseball. You were so scared to tell me. But when you did, we went together to apologize and pay for repairs. Remember what I told you? That mistakes don't define us. How we handle them does. I think I made a mistake with Daniel. Can we figure out how to handle it together? The wedding invitation never came. Day 25. I drove past Sophia's apartment building. Not stopping, not stalking, just confirming she existed. Her car sat in its usual spot, confirming nothing except geography. Day 28 brought panic. Wedding shops, caterers, photographers. Everything required final decisions. Was I excluded completely? Would I watch my only child marry someone I didn't trust without being present for a moment? Sophia, it's Dad again. I know I've called a lot this week. Tomorrow is June 1st. I assume that's still your wedding day. I understand if you don't want me there, but I need to know. Please, just tell me if you're okay. My voice cracked on that last message. 30 days of silence had worn down my composure like water on stone. Day 30. I prepared dinner for one. Simple pasta, the kind Sophia and I used to make together on Sunday nights. The table felt enormous, with only one place setting. The empty chair across from me is a constant reminder of what I'd lost through stubborn principle. 6:45 p.m. tomorrow, somewhere in the Hamptons, my daughter will marry Daniel Cross. I'd probably watch it happen through social media posts, assuming anyone bothered to include me in their feeds anymore. I sat down to eat, twirling pasta around my fork without appetite. Outside, spring was surrendering to summer. Life moved forward whether I participated or not. The phone rang. My fork clattered against the plate. After 30 days of silence, unexpected calls meant bad news. Emergency rooms, accidents. The worst-case scenarios that haunted every parent's imagination. Sophia's name glowed on the screen. My hands trembled as I swiped to answer. Hello, Dad. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Nervous. Hi. I stood up so quickly, my chair scraped against the floor. Are you okay? is everything. I'm fine. I'm calling because tomorrow is... She paused. I could hear traffic in the background. Daniel's voice saying something indistinct. The wedding is tomorrow. I know. The words came out rough. I cleared my throat. I wasn't sure if I wanted you there. Relief hit like a physical blow. I leaned against the dining room wall, suddenly dizzy. Thank you. I was hoping, but there are conditions. Of course there were. Nothing came easy anymore. I'm listening. You can't say anything negative about Daniel. You can't make faces or comments or whatever that thing is you do when you disapprove. What thing? You know what? That subtle eyebrow thing. The way you pressed your lips together at dinner that night. I touched my eyebrow unconsciously. Don't. Promise me, Dad. This is my wedding day. It needs to be perfect. Perfect for her. I could manage perfectly, or at least the appearance of it. I promise. No comments, no faces, no disapproval. I'll be the model father of the bride. Her exhale was audible. Good. The ceremony starts at 4 o'clock. The Grand Pavilion in the Hamptons. I'll text you the address. Cocktails at 5 o'clock. Dinner at 7. What should I wear? A navy suit is fine. Nothing too formal. The Cross family already thinks. She stopped herself. Think what? Nothing. Just a navy suit is perfect. We both knew she'd been about to say the Cross family already thought I couldn't afford anything formal. Probably true from their perspective. Sophia, about that night in the car. Dad, don't. Let's start fresh tomorrow. Okay. Clean slate. Clean slate. As if 30 days of separation could be erased with good intentions. But I'd take whatever she offered. Clean slate. I agreed. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too, Dad. I'll see you tomorrow. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, hardly believing the conversation had actually happened. 30 days of agonizing silence ended with a 5-minute call that changed everything. My dinner sat cooling on the table, but I had no appetite. Instead, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, opening the closet to examine my navy suit, the same one I'd worn to that disastrous dinner. But tomorrow it will serve a different purpose. Tomorrow I'd walk my daughter down the aisle to marry Daniel Cross, someone I didn't trust. I'd smile and shake hands with Edward Cross, Margaret Cross, maybe even Priscilla Cross and Eldon Cross, people who'd once mocked my supposed poverty. I'd pretend everything was perfect while watching my only child bind herself to a family that measured worth in dollars. But I'd be there. After 30 days of wondering if I'd lost her forever, I'd be there. Sometimes that had to be enough. Morning arrived. Sunlight streamed through my window at exactly 6:30, the same time I'd been waking for 30 years. But today felt different. Today I'd see my daughter again. The navy suit hung on my closet door, pressed and ready. Conservative tie, polished shoes, everything Sophia Reed had requested. Nothing the Cross family could criticize as trying too hard. Breakfast required careful planning. My blood sugar monitor showed normal levels, but wedding stress could change that quickly. I took my morning insulin, ate steel-cut oats, and checked my glucose meter twice. Diabetic emergencies at my daughter's wedding weren't on today's agenda. The weather forecast promised perfection. 72 degrees, a light breeze, no chance of rain. The kind of day Sophia had dreamed about since childhood, when she planned elaborate backyard weddings for her dolls. By 8 o'clock, I was dressed and examined my reflection. Respectable, clean-shaven, careful grooming. I looked like exactly what the Cross family expected. A working man who'd done his best. You can do this, I said to myself. No comments, no faces, no disapproval. Perfect behavior. The gift had required serious thought. Too expensive would seem suspicious. Too cheap would embarrass Sophia. I settled on a crystal vase from the local shop, elegant enough for the occasion, modest enough for my supposed budget. $68, wrapped beautifully with ribbon and a small card. For the happy couple, I'd written, wishing you joy, love, and understanding in your marriage. Understanding. If only they knew how much I understood about their character already. The drive to the Hamptons would take 2 hours. Ceremony at 4, cocktails at 5, dinner at 7. Time enough for one final check of everything. Insulin pen, glucose tablets, wallet, phone. Everything a responsible father might need for his daughter's wedding day. I looked around my modest home one last time. If today went poorly, if I couldn't maintain the perfect behavior Sophia required, this might be my last peaceful morning here. The grand pavilion rose from manicured lawns like something from a magazine spread. Bentleys and Mercedes lined the circular drive, chrome gleaming in the sun. My Toyota looked like a lost delivery truck among thoroughbreds. A valet approached with barely concealed surprise. "Sir, are you here for the Cross-Reed wedding?" "I'm the bride's father." His expression shifted to professional sympathy. "Of course, sir. Right this way." Inside, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Floral arrangements towered like small trees, every bloom perfect, every stem precisely placed. The air smelled of lilies and wealth. "Thomas." Priscilla Cross's voice carried across the marble foyer like a foghorn. "Everyone, this is Sophia Reed's father." 20 well-dressed guests turned to stare. Their eyes scanned me. Modest suit, department store shoes, a gift that clearly wasn't from Tiffany's. Polite smiles followed, the kind reserved for charity cases. "How wonderful that you could make it." Eldon Cross materialized beside his wife. "I know the drive from where is it you live again? Hoboken, right? Quite a distance in that little car of yours." The photographer appeared, expensive equipment hanging around his neck. "Family photos in 5 minutes." "Immediate family only," Priscilla Cross clarified quickly. "Thomas, perhaps you could wait over there." Over there meant a corner beside the coats, away from the important people. I watched the Cross family pose with Sophia Reed, their designer clothing perfectly coordinated like a magazine spread. Daniel Cross's groomsmen joined them, all Harvard ties and inherited confidence. A waiter appeared with champagne on a silver tray. "Krug Class Diambane," he announced proudly. "Excellent vintage." "My goodness," one guest murmured. "That's $300 a bottle. Only the best for our son's wedding," Eldon Cross declared loudly, his eyes locking on mine. Of course, not everyone appreciates fine champagne. The ceremony seating revealed another insult. The front rows gleamed with Edward Cross's business associates and society friends. I was directed to row 7, behind distant relatives and plus ones. The father of the bride, relegated to the cheap seats. Beautiful ceremony location. I commented to the woman beside me. "Oh, yes," she whispered. $50, 000 just for the venue rental. Thank goodness the Cross family could afford it properly. I heard the bride's family. She stopped, embarrassed. "Has very modest means." I finished for her. "Yes, I've heard that too." Later, Richard Hale, the best man, circulated with expensive cigars. "Cuban," he announced proudly, "save for special occasions." The humidor skipped my row entirely. During cocktail hour, I caught a brief moment with Sophia Reed. She looked radiant in silk and pearls, her happiness glowing beneath carefully applied makeup. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you for coming, Dad. I know this isn't easy." "It's your day. That's all that matters." She squeezed my hand. "Daniel's family means, well, they're just particular about their traditions." Particular? Like excluding the bride's father from photos. Like seating him with strangers. "I'm fine," I assured her. "Go enjoy your reception." Dinner arrived with theatrical flourish. 5 courses carried information by waiters, each plate resembling artwork. The wine pairings alone probably cost more than my month's groceries. From my distant table, I watched Daniel Cross gesturing expansively, his stories making the groomsmen roar with laughter. Occasionally, he glanced toward me with that same smirk I remember from our first meeting. The dessert station appeared like a sugary cathedral. 5 towering tiers of wedding cake, surrounded by chocolate sculptures and golden pastries. Guests circled with phones raised, capturing every ornate detail. I approached carefully, the perpetual outsider. The chocolate fountain gurgled. Pastries sparkled with gold leaf. Everything designed to impress. Nothing designed for someone with diabetes. A waiter noticed my hesitation. Can I help you select something, sir? Do you have any sugar-free options? I'm diabetic. Of course, we have fresh fruit, sugar-free chocolate mousse, almond cookies with stevia. That sounds perfect. Fruit, please. Behind me, conversations about vacation homes and stock portfolios swirled. Normal rich people talk. What's that about diabetic options? Daniel Cross's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. He approached, champagne clearly loosening his tongue. I was just asking about sugar-free. Sugar-free? His laugh was too loud, drawing stares. Let me guess. You can't afford proper medical care either. Conversations froze. Heads turned. The air thickened. I managed my condition just fine. Of course you do, with free clinic visits and discount meds. His voice carried now, performing for an audience. But hey, at least you made it to the wedding, right? Even if you can't afford dessert. Daniel. Sophia Reed's voice sliced in, horrified. What's going on? Just helping your father understand the dessert options, he smirked. Apparently beggars can be choosers when it comes to wedding cake. Beggars. The word hung in the air like poison. 50 guests were silent. Waiters frozen mid-service. Even the fountain seemed to hush. That's enough, Sophia said sharply. Is it? Daniel stepped closer, drunk and cruel. Because I'm tired pretending this is okay. Tired of watching your deadbeat father embarrass our family. He's not embarrassing anyone. Look at him. Daniel gestured wildly at me. My modest suit, my careful posture, my simple presence among their luxury. Look at this pathetic situation. Then his hands moved, fast, decisive, reckless. My face at the wedding cake, with sound like fabric tearing. Frosting filled my eyes, my mouth, my nose. 5 tiers of sugar collapsed around me. Vanilla and chocolate mixing with humiliation. The room erupted. Gasps, shrieks, nervous laughter. Phones flashing. Chairs scraping for better views. I straightened slowly, cake dripping from my hair, frosting sliding down my cheeks. The taste, expensive vanilla, real butter, ironically perfect. Through the sugary haze, I saw their faces. Shocked, entertained, disgusted. And Sophia Reed's face horrified, trembling. What have you done? She whispered. Daniel Cross stood grinning, proud of his performance, oblivious of the fact he'd just made the gravest mistake of his privileged life. The crack of Sophia's palm against Daniel's cheek echoed like a gunshot. Red bloomed across his face as he staggered back. Shock replaced Daniel Cross's drunken smirk. How dare you? Sophia Reed's voice carried across the marble floor, reaching every corner of the reception hall. How dare you lay a hand on my father? I continued wiping vanilla frosting from my eyes, tasting expensive buttercream, while processing what had just happened. Wedding guests formed a loose circle around us, phones already recording what would become the social media scandal of the season. Sophia, calm down. Daniel Cross stammered, touching his reddening cheek. It was just what? Just assault? Just humiliating the man who raised me while you stood there laughing? A voice boomed from across the room, cutting through the chaos like authority itself. Enough! Charles Whitmore rose from his seat at table 12, his silver hair catching the chandelier's crystal light. At 65, he commanded attention through presence rather than volume. The room quieted as he approached. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles Whitmore announced, his voice carrying the weight of boardroom authority. Allow me to introduce Thomas Reed. Some of you may recognize him as a founding investor in Technova Industries. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several guests straightened, suddenly paying attention. Thomas, Charles continued, his eyes finding mine across the frosting-covered chaos, is one of America's most successful private investors. His portfolio includes early stakes in companies that transform the digital landscape. Current net worth, he paused dramatically, well north of $1 billion. The room exploded into whispers. Heads turned toward me, then back to Daniel Cross, whose face had drained of all color. That's Thomas Reed. A woman near table 8 gasped. The Technova Thomas Reed. I knew he looked familiar. Another guest added, his investments have been legendary in Silicon Valley for decades. Wait, someone else called. The man who turned $5,000 into $4 million in 2 years, Thomas Reed. I straightened my frosting-stained jacket, meeting Charles Whitmore's supportive gaze with a slight nod. Recognition spread like wildfire. Business connections, whispered confirmations, stories of wealth that made the Cross family's $3 million look like pocket change. Daniel's face had gone from red to white to green. Behind him, Eldon Cross and Priscilla Cross stood frozen, their expressions cycling through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror. But he drives a Toyota, Priscilla whispered. He lives in Hoboken, Eldon added weakly. Charles Whitmore smiled grimly. Exactly. Thomas understands something your family clearly doesn't. Money doesn't define character. Character defines how you treat people, regardless of their apparent financial status. The circle of guests pressed closer, fascinated. Some were embarrassed for having witnessed the assault. Others thrilled by the unfolding social catastrophe. Daniel Cross opened his mouth several times without producing sound, like a fish pulled from expensive water. I finished wiping the last of the cake from my face, looking at all the staring guests. People who'd ignored me an hour ago now watch it with newfound respect and thinly veiled mortification. The Cross family began moving toward me with panicked expressions, their social calculations scrambling. Thomas, please. Eldon reached me first, business instincts overriding his paralysis. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. I brushed crumbs from my sleeves, keeping the quiet dignity I'd carried all night. Misunderstanding? I asked calmly. Your son just physically assaulted me in front of 200 witnesses. Which part did I misunderstand? Daniel stumbled forward, alcohol and panic making him clumsy. Mr. Reed, sir, I didn't know. I mean, if I'd realized. Realized what? That I might be wealthy. I shook my head. So, assault is acceptable if the victim is poor? No, that's not. I didn't mean. Daniel's words tangled on his tongue. Sweat beaded his forehead despite the air conditioning. Priscilla Cross appeared at his side, her instinct snapping to damage control. Thomas, surely we can put this unfortunate incident behind us. Family disagreements happen at weddings. Emotions run high. Family disagreements? I repeated, as if the words were a foreign language. Is that what you call your months of deliberate humiliation? Excluding me from photos? Your son's physical violence. We apologize. Eldon rushed in, his tone shifting into negotiation. Completely, unreservedly. Let's start fresh, shall we? Clean slate. The same word Sophia had once used with me, but now hollow, transactional. Start fresh. I mused. Now that you know I have money. Your financial status has nothing to do with this, Priscilla protested, her voice too high. Charles Whitmore laughed sharply. Madam, your treatment of Thomas had everything to do with money. You mocked him because you thought he was poor. Now you want his friendship because he's rich. That's not true. Daniel blurted desperately. I would have treated him the same either way. Really? I asked quietly. The same way you treated the waiters tonight? The valet? The housekeeping staff? Daniel's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Your character was revealed perfectly tonight. I said, not by how you treated a rich man, but by how you acted when you thought consequences didn't matter. Please, Eldon tried again. Business aside, personal aside, you're going to be family. We need to work together. Family. The word tasted bitter. I watched you teach your son that money determines worth, that poverty justifies cruelty, that wealth excuses anything. I brushed a final piece of frosting from my collar. You want a fresh start? Here's mine. I'm leaving. You can't just walk away. Priscilla said, desperation cracking her voice. Think about Sophia. Think about the business opportunities, what we could accomplish together. Business opportunities. Even now, cornered by social ruin, they calculated profits. I am thinking about Sophia, I said softly. She deserves better than a family that measures love in dollars. Daniel grabbed my arm as I turned toward the exit. Wait, I can change. I can be better. I looked at his hand gripping my sleeve, then at his face. You're 30 years old. This is who you are. The crowd parted as I walked toward the doors, whispers trailing in my wake. Behind me, the Cross family's voices rose in frantic appeals. But their words meant nothing now. They'd show me exactly who they were when they thought it didn't matter. Evening air washed over me like absolution as I stepped outside the pavilion. Ahead, the parking lot stretched toward my modest Toyota among the abandoned luxury cars. Footsteps pounded behind me. Dad, wait! I turned. Sophia Reed, lifting her wedding dress, designer silk dragging across asphalt, hair undone, makeup streaked with tears. Sweetheart, you should go back inside. It's your wedding. No, she stopped, breathless. It's not. Not anymore. We stood there in the golden light. Father and daughter, separated by a month of hurt, but united now. Her $20,000 gown shimmered beside my frosting-stained suit. I'm so sorry, she whispered. You were right about Daniel, about his family, about what money does to people. I'm sorry, too, I said gently. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. Why didn't you? Because I wanted you to choose someone who loved you for who you are, not for what I have. I wanted your relationships to be genuine, like ours. Our relationship is genuine, she said. It survived wealth, poverty, conflict, separation. It survived tonight. She stepped closer, taking my hand. I spent 2 months angry that you didn't trust my judgment. But you knew. You saw what I couldn't. Sometimes being right doesn't feel like victory. I admitted. She let out a trembling laugh. I just left my wedding reception to chase my father across a parking lot in a $20,000 dress. $20,000? I raised an eyebrow. For that much, it should have come with running shoes. Her laugh this time was real. Take me home, Dad. What about the reception? Your guests? What about them? Let Daniel explain why the bride disappeared. I looked at my daughter standing in silk beside my old Toyota. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. I opened the passenger door, helped her gather the dress inside, then walked around to the driver's side. Guests were already spilling out, searching for her. Where to? I asked, starting the engine. Home, she said. Your home. Our home. The drive back to Hoboken took us through familiar streets, past the places where I'd raised her, where we'd built a life based on values instead of valuations. The late sun painted everything gold, making even modest houses glow. I understand now, Sophia said softly. Why do you live the way you do? Why don't you ever flaunt the money? Money is a tool, I said, not an identity, not a measure of worth, just a tool to build the life you actually want. What life do you want? She asked. I pulled into my driveway, looking at the little house where I had raised my daughter. This one, exactly this one. We sat quietly, watching the sunset over our neighborhood. Simple houses, modest lawns, genuine relationships built on character, not capital. Come on, I said finally. Let's go inside. I'll make coffee. We'll figure out what comes next. Together, we walked toward the front door of the little house that had always been rich in everything that mattered. Life always gives us a chance to rise again. If this story touched you, don't just scroll away. Subscribe and join us for more stories of strength, revenge, and redemption.